This is my 2007 Suzuki DRZ 125 project bike. My clutch pull is super hard, and I've determined that my clutch plates are sticking together. I believe the solution to that is to replace the clutch plates, and so that's what I'm going to show you how to do today. The first step of replacing your clutch is figuring out where your clutch actually is. And so on pretty much any motorcycle, the standard is to have the clutch on the right side. So on this bike, it's right in here. Pretty much every motocross bike is going to be like that. Japanese bikes, European bikes, they're all pretty much the same. Some bikes have it on the left side. A super easy way to check that is to just open up your oil fill cap. And you can usually see inside. And typically wherever you put the oil in, that's your clutch side. So that's super easy. You can actually look in there. It's kind of hard to see on video, but you can see the clutch. And so now we know that the clutch is right there. So the next step is obviously going to be to take it off. So the clutch plates that I'm putting in, I'm not replacing the steels. I'm just replacing the friction plates. And so these are EBC branded clutch plates. I got these off from motorsport.com. Super good option. They're not like amazing clutch plates, but for a 125 4-stroke like this, it should be just fine. Even like, I would even consider putting these into my KTM. Really does not make a huge difference, but these are the plates I'm using. Feel free to go get some, they're pretty cheap. So now you start taking off your clutch cover. It's not super difficult. I went ahead and removed my oil filter cap. You don't need to do that. That's just what I decided to do. Next, you take the kickstand off on this particular bike. And then you go around and remove all of the 8mm screws on the perimeter of the clutch cover. I had to get an extension for one. You don't have to take them out. You'll see in a second, I just kind of raise the clutch cover up. All of the bolts are going to be different lengths. And so you just want to keep track of which bolt goes in what spot, and then you're good. Okay, so I just really want to go through quickly and label everything. So if you've never done anything inside of a bike before, this will look a little intimidating. Really, the only thing you need to worry about is this big circle right here. Okay, this is going to be your clutch. You don't need to worry about any of the other stuff right now. So for the job we're doing, we're just going to worry about this. With these bolts, underneath these bolts are your springs. The clutch is a collection of different plates, and they separate and connect whenever you pull in the clutch lever. And so to put tension on them, there's springs underneath these. These bolts are very fragile. They're super easy to strip, and so be super careful whenever you're taking them off, and then don't be surprised if there is a little bit of tension whenever you remove them, because there is a spring under there. That's why they have these washers. So the next step is you're going to pull out all of the bolts and all of the springs on the face of the clutch. Once you get those out, make sure you don't lose them. I have a little dish off camera that I'm putting everything in. Then you just pull the face of the clutch off. It's called the clutch boss, and that'll give you access to the different plates. Okay, so I've just removed the clutch plates. These are what the clutch plates look like. Different bikes will have a different amount of plates, but I just want to talk about how these work for a little bit, because it is really important depending on what job you're doing. So basically you have two different kinds of clutch plates. So you have friction plates, which look like this, right? They've got these little squares on them. They can be different colors, just kind of depending on what kind of plate they are. But typically it's like a tan or gray plate with black squares like this. And it is important the wear of the black squares. And so you can see the width of those little squares. That's what grabs onto the other plate, which is the steel. And so on your clutch steels, there are just these metal discs. These usually stay good for a really long time, unless your clutch is getting excessively hot. And so if your clutch is getting way too hot, it can damage these. You'll know if these are damaged if they're either, they can be warped, they could be really thinned out at different spots, or there could be discoloration. And so if you see like black or purple or like some sort of blue anywhere on these plates that comes from heat, you could want to look into replacing them. With the friction plates, the main thing you're worried about is the width of these little squares. But if they're super discolored, that could also be a bad sign. This bike was ran by the previous owner with very little oil because it burned oil and it was like some kid. And so these plates are kind of cooked. And I just know that because I took the clutch cover off previously and I pulled the clutch lever and the friction plates won't separate from the steel plates. And so whenever I put this bike back together, I'm gonna replace the friction plates. I'm reusing the steel plates. And then whenever I reuse the steel plates, I'm just gonna clean these really well with brake cleaner, and that should help my sticking situation. Super important step with this is to know what order your clutch plates go in. And so you can see right now, I have 5 friction plates and 4 steels, right? And so it's arranged with a friction plate on each end. And so that means whenever I put it in, whenever I'm finished, there needs to be a friction plate on each end. If I don't order the plates right, whenever I put it back together, it'll cause issues. And so this bike specifically doesn't have any sort of spacers or anything. If there are extra parts that you don't really know what to do with it, go on motorsport.com, go to the OEM parts section, look up the make, model, and year of your bike, go to the clutch section, and then you'll be able to see an explosion diagram with all the parts that are on your bike. If you lose something, you can buy another one. Usually it's pretty cheap. I've noticed that the OEM parts on motorsport.com are usually a lot cheaper than other sites like Rocky Mountain ATV. Another thing, if this is your first time doing this, as in you have clutch issues, like it's dragging or something, you technically don't need to buy new plates the first time. So since these plates spin, there's friction involved, right? And so it creates a lot of heat. And so if you notice, I have 3 plates in the middle and then 2 plates on the outside, obviously, right? So the plates in the middle are gonna be more worn in than the plates on the outside. And that's because in the middle, there's a lot more heat because the oil doesn't circulate through as well in between the plates to cool them off. And so if this is your first time, whenever you are reassembling, you can put the plates that are currently in the middle on the outside and the plates that are currently on the outside in the middle. And since just because of the way things wear in, you can get a little more life out of your clutch. And I've actually noticed that it doesn't really cause any performance issues. It's a perfectly normal practice. It's like widely used in the dirt bike community. You can do it on street bikes, you can do it on dirt bikes, anything with a wet clutch, that'll work. Super good option. And so, you know, if you don't want to spend the $50 on new friction plates, then that's a really good option. So before we get back into reassembly, I just want to take a second to compare the old clutch plates with the new ones. So these EBC clutch plates, I'm not gonna lie to you and say that they're the best plates on the market, but they are a very reasonable price, and I would recommend them to someone, especially someone on a budget. So if you look at these tabs, you can tell that the old clutch plate is very obviously a different color from the new one. And that can come from a couple of things. That can come from heat. It'll come from using old oil for a long period of time. Since the oil gets black and it circulates through the clutch plates, it'll just kind of stain it over time. So discoloration does not exactly mean that your clutch plates are cooked. So really what you want to look for is problems actually using the clutch. Problems using the clutch. You know, if there's no problem, no reason to fix anything. So I just wanted to take a second. You can also tell that the black parts are a lot more worn in versus on this, it's got a little pattern. Most plates usually come with a pattern. So that is something to look out for. Okay, one more step before installation. So if you notice, your new clutch plates are gonna be dry. And so if you're restacking, you can skip this step. Or if you're using clutch plates that I guess have already been used before, you can also skip this step. But since these are dry, they'll absorb oil. And if you just install the clutch plates and then let the bike sit, then the bottom of the clutch plate is going to be in a pool of oil and the top of the clutch plate isn't going to be. And so that can cause warping. And so what you want to do is soak the clutch plates beforehand. And so right here in front of me, I've just got like a little tin, and I'm just going to set all these clutch plates on here. I want to separate them so that way oil gets in pretty evenly. And then I'm just going to pour some 10W40 motor oil into this pan. I'm going to let it sit for a little bit. Different people have different opinions on how long you should let it sit for. I don't think it really makes a difference. I'm also gonna ride this bike tonight. So, you know, I'm just gonna let it sit for like 10, 15 minutes. One last thing before we go and reinstall everything. This outer rim right here, that's the clutch basket. And so that's where the clutch plates slot into. The notches go into these little grooves right here, right? And so this basket is still good. But one thing you want to look out for is this is the basket off of an RMZ 250. And you can see notching. And so the notching is bad. And so on this, I would actually still use this just because the notching isn't horrible and clutch baskets can be expensive. But if you can see the baskets, or not the baskets, if you can see the notching really clearly from the top from a perspective like this, I would replace the clutch basket. That'll lead to issues that you don't want to have to deal with. So right here, all I'm doing is cleaning off my steel plates. I'm just using brake cleaner and a rag. Before you install the steels, you want to make sure that they also have a coating of oil on them. So I reinstall my friction plates and my steel plates in the correct order. I put my clutch boss back on. I reinstall all of the springs and each of the bolts. For this next part, you just want to get the bolts down, and then you need to get a torque wrench. It's very important that these bolts are torqued correctly. They're very easy to strip out. And so for this, I did it at about 7 Newton meters, basically just a very small amount of torque. After that, I went in and I reinstalled my clutch cover. If your clutch cover gasket has any holes in it, or if it's ripped at all, you need to redo the gasket. And so you can make one out of like a soda box, or you can use RTV, which is a gasket paste. Make sure you use blue RTV because that's oil resistant. I went through, I installed everything. I put the Kickstarter back on, and then afterwards I actually went through with a hand tool and made sure everything was torqued correctly. After that, all that was left to do is pick the bike up and make sure everything works correctly and that the bike runs properly. You're actually about to see me make a huge error. If you notice, I did not tighten my oil filter cap all the way. I didn't tighten it at all, actually. And so I go to start the bike turns on, and then oil starts leaking everywhere. Oh no! Oh freak. Luckily, I caught it very quickly, but it does just go to show how important it is to test everything to make sure it's working properly. It would have been really bad if I went to some ATV park ready for the trails and then my bike started leaking oil everywhere. Unfortunately, I had to go through and clean everything up. I just put a layer of cat litter over the oil to soak everything up, and then I'll come back in a few hours and shovel it all up. Once that's out of the way, I can finally actually do a test on the bike. So what I do here is I turn the bike on, make sure it runs correctly, and then I cycle through every gear just to make sure the clutch grabs. And if I move forward a little bit, that's pretty much what I want right now. If I need to later, I can go in and readjust my clutch cable because the new plates are going to be a different thickness from the old plates. And so that will affect how my clutch cable is set up. And so if you don't put the correct amount of slack in, then your clutch will start dragging and you'll ruin the brand new plates. All right, guys, make sure you like and subscribe. Recommend this to all your friends. Share it with your mom. Hit that notification bell. Become part of my notification squad. Let me know if you want to see another video and what it should be about. I'll catch you guys in the next one.